Well, being that it's 9 o'clock, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Typically, you take your hat off.
We have the agenda in front of us here. Is there any additions or corrections? If not, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll move to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, moving on to approve the previous board minutes from October 22nd. Everybody's had a chance to look over those, or any additions or corrections to the minutes? If not, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I saw no problem. I'll move to approve.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Greg seconded. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Public comment. Now's the time to come before the board if anybody has a public comment. Seeing none, we'll move on to appointments, which we have none. Moving on to the consent agenda. We have 8 items on the consent agenda. Any questions on that? If not, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Guess the only question I have is on 4 and 5, 7-day. Are we having retirements or shortage of deputies over for transport and coverage?
Ann, you wanna come forward?
We are, right now, we're down to, 1 67-day sheriff's deputy, that's available for, shift coverage, someone who, you know, can, fill in when somebody is on a leave of absence or that sort of thing. So Brian would like to increase that pool if possible. And as far as the transport officers as well, we're down to 2. And he would like to have more individuals if possible for transports.
And they're used as needed, so it's,
Right.
yeah, okay. Thank you, that was my thought, was concerned. So improving the pool is basically the answer to that.
Correct.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right. Move on to action items. Number 1, consider request not to fill a currently vacant lead jailer dispatcher position and instead a competitive search for a full-time jailer dispatcher position as allowed by DOC. Ann?
So, the sheriff looked into this and, he discovered that we don't need to have, a lead jailer on staff all the time as long as, there's somebody on call. So, and we're having, trouble filling this lead jailer dispatcher position that we had open. So he checked with the DOC and got the go-ahead to change this position to a jailer dispatcher.
So it's basically the designation or the name, term, or
Right.
responsibilities type of thing?
It is less, yeah. So instead of having an additional lead, then we would replace that with a jailer dispatcher.
Thank you.
And we were advertising for a lead and not getting any response, so this just is a change to regular, okay.
Correct.
I think they had one applicant, didn't they?
That's possible. It's been a while now since we
I
had
think they had one
advertised for that.
internal applicant. Decided not to do
I don't see any problem with that change, so I move to approve the competitive search for a jailer dispatch position.
Motion's been made to change it from lead jailer to just jailer dispatcher. Is there a second to that?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Number 2, consider request to conduct a search for an assistant county attorney, number 2. Carol and Ann. This pertains to the fact that Sam is,
Yes. Effective January, whatever the first
Fifth, I think, fourth or fifth, something like that
day
it was.
is.
or, yep,
It was Sam's recommendation that Sue be appointed county attorney for the remainder of his term and to advertise for a county attorney two immediately because it's going to take time. It's going to take a significant amount of time.
yeah, we met with Sam and
Yeah. we met with
discussed the
Sam.
fact that we should,
We should do this right.
pronto, we should do
Right
a
away.
search for a number
There
2
are a lot of
attorney.
openings for assistant county attorneys.
Mm-hmm.
So we're just hopeful that we'll get some applicants advertising for the county attorney
Get it
too.
advertised and get started and see what we can find, yep.
Right.
So question with regard to current county, assistant county attorney being interim county attorney. How long is that period?
2 years.
2 years is the remainder of his term.
But we haven't acted on that yet.
No, but the question is that, can you do a 2-year interim or do you have to have a special election?
No, you can do a 2-year interim. She did that before
Yep,
when
Rick Jackson left.
Jackson,
Okay,
Basically fills out the term of Sam's.
Right, I don't know. It
Remainder of
just-
Sam's term.
in certain cases, if there's X amount of time left, you have to have a special election.
Yeah, that's like in
But that's not the
commissioner
case.
races or whatever. but,
Right,
yeah.
right. I just asked him. Thank you.
Think we need to get it going, so I'll move to approve the request.
Is there a second to that? Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Number 3, consider approving state of Minnesota transportation limited use permit regarding snowmobile trail nighttime two-way use resolution number 2441 for this purpose. Polly.
Brian has some background information too, so he's going to join us here.
Is this something new?
I was not familiar with it at all before.
Well, there's been some changes, but I was wondering, is this like, Bob, do you know, have you had to apply for this before?
I've heard of it, but I don't think we've ever had to do it.
Okay, go ahead, sorry.
So that's okay. So I originally found out about it. I was CC'd in an email between the president of the Snow Gophers Snowmobile Club and this Dave Evans from State of Minnesota DOT. So he just mentioned this would be coming our way. Please be watching for it. In the meantime, Brian had, how did you get your info? He had really good info that pertained to this.
Yep, so it was the Mower County engineer sent sent an email out to all the other county engineers and the district asking questions about this LUP on are you know, is the engineer dealing with this? What are the counties doing? You know, is it the county auditor that's working with it? And the responses that we got back is pretty much every county engineer said we are not bringing this forward to our board for approval. And I spoke with Sam Yant yesterday, and he said, you know, by approving this, it adds some liability to the county, and what is the county getting out of this approval? So, in his view, there may not be a benefit for Houston County approving this LUP. And if other counties aren't approving it, said, you know, it's kind of, it's in the board's discretion as far as if you want to approve it or not, but is there a benefit to the county, and should we be approving this is kind of where things are at as far as being in question. Haven't had a discussion with the other county engineers on it yet. We might have a discussion in 3 weeks. If you want, I can bring it up and talk with them then and see what the status is. But at this time, as far as I'm aware, there isn't a single county in our district that's gonna be approving these LUPs.
Okay, so now this is for permission to use county ditches
This is
to,
MinDOT right away for the snowmobile clubs. So like,
so like for state highways and
Yeah.
county highways as well?
this just pertains this is an agreement between the county and the state to use the state highways for the snowmobile trails. So this can put the trail within the state right away, so they don't need to have snowmobiles on each side of the road going opposite directions. They can be on the same side of the road going the opposite directions. And what some of the other counties are saying is that a lot of these snowmobile clubs have agreements with Minnesota DNR already. They're getting funding through the DNR. They have other sources of funding. Why doesn't MinDOT work with Minnesota DNR on these LUPs? Why is the county involved with these LUPs for trail agreements when the counties aren't overseeing the snowmobile trails? Snowmobile trails are by private clubs. They're not being ran by or operated by the county.
You know how many trails go along the state highway? I mean, that would shut them down.
Actually, by statute, they're allowed to ride in there. But what this is they're talking about where you're running a trail with the opposing traffic. Because when they run, by statute, you're supposed to ride with
With the traffic.
with the traffic.
Right.
A lot of the trails are not really feasible for that, so that's why they have the permit for that. Why they don't work with the DNR is really good.
So you're saying that they'd have to have a trail on each side?
Correct. Which would make more maintenance, more, you know, crossing of the roads, which also brings up a safety.
But the maintenance would be by the snowmobile clubs? That's what they
Right,
get the
that's the
money
way it
for?
is right now, yeah.
Should wait till he comes back with some more information, 3 weeks.
Yeah, so my discussion with Polly is, you know, does the board want to, you know, quickly jump on this agreement, or do we want to, hold off and wait and bring back up in the future, or just say, you know what, there is no benefit to the county to approve it. You know, obviously the trails are a benefit to the county and be able to use one side of the road instead of both sides. And there are some benefits to the users of those trails, but does the county want to have this agreement with the state? So.
Is there any requirement of the state on that that you found out? For us to pass it? Or-
There, as far as I'm aware, there's nothing that requires the county to pass it. The issue is that the state does not want to deal with townships and these trail clubs and small cities. They want to deal with one entity. So if they can get the counties to all do this, then they don't need to worry about dealing with each individual club.
So when I look at this map, is that the gray highlighted areas? Is that the trails that they're talking about? Because not all of that is on state highway.
Yeah, when I first saw that map too, you know, they show all the trails on it.
Right.
And some of the grays aren't on state highway either, when you look at them.
Right.
So.
That's what I'm asking. I mean, it's not all state highways they're talking about here.
Unfortunately, that changes every year too as the landowners change. Trails get rerouted where they'll bounce in and out from the state highway to the, you know, to private land. Along with your county road right of ways.
I agree with Greg on waiting.
So we should just table this action until we get more information?
I think so, because I think there's a lot of unknowns. And, I don't think it's a benefit at this time, and there's no requirement to have it done by a certain date, January 1st or nothing that you know of.
We're not aware of
doesn't say,
anything, and I did ask that question too with Polly on if this has been done in the past. You know, is there a previous LUP that was done 10 years ago, and we're not aware of that either, so.
That doesn't put the opening of the trails for their December opening date in any form of jeopardy.
Not that I'm aware of either. It shouldn't. As far as I know. I can certainly ask.
Be a good one to find out, so. Definitely want to work with those organizations.
Oh, yeah. Even if we don't get snow anymore.
Right.
Well, I think there's a consensus to table it for now. And we'll bring it up in a couple weeks again.
After you talk to all them engineers and see what other counties are gonna do, that would help us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to action item number 4, consider approving a CUP for Nicholas Beeson and Jennifer Albright to build a dwelling on less than 40 acres in Houston Township. Amelia.
Good morning.
Morning.
So Nicholas Beeson and Jennifer Albrecht brought a conditional use request to the planning commission there a couple weeks ago. This is just about a 29-acre parcel off of Hop Hollow Road. And we've actually reviewed it, I think, most recently back in 2021, and I believe it had a CUP issued even prior to that. But those building projects never actually took place, and so those CUPs had expired. This proposal is a little different than those as well, in that they actually asked to kind of jump the dry run that's there, and they're gonna be building more on the east side of that parcel. And in a preliminary review of the site, it looked like everything would meet our building standards. It was asked about wetland for the driveway at the planning commission meeting, and that would have to be reviewed and approved. But they do potentially have other options to cross that without having to go through wetlands if that was deemed not be allowable. So, do you have anything else to add, Greg?
No, pretty much the way it went.
So the previous issued permit CUP was that for this different owner or?
Yep, these guys have a signed agreement contingent upon this approval
Oh, okay,
with that owner.
all right.
The first CUP was on the other side of the runaway, right?
Yep, if I recall correctly, both of the previous CUPs were going to be right along Hop Hollow Road, kind of with that existing building that's there.
This gets them off the road a little bit farther, and it's a nicer area to build, I think.
Yeah, they had a septic contractor out there to ensure that they would be able to locate a system there. And they have that documentation in the packet.
I'm familiar with this property. I think there's a little shed there already and stuff, so.
Apparently there was a previous COP that wasn't utilized, so this would be kind of a renewal or with different owners.
It's a new,
Yep,
it's a new
and-
one.
Yeah, it's a brand new one on its own, because that one
Yeah.
had expired.
Right. And of course, these standard necessities to go with federal and state guidelines and wetland
Oh.
thing is another stipulation.
Conditions? you mean?
Yep, I can read those if you'd like.
That's fine, go ahead.
So we did include the 2 standard conditions on this permit, that 1, the permittee shall comply with all federal, state, and local laws and regulations, and 2, that the county may enter onto the premises at reasonable times and in a reasonable manner to ensure the permit holder is in compliance with the conditions and all other applicable statutes, rules, and ordinances.
Okay. What action would we like to take for this CUP?
I'll make a motion to approve the CUP for Nicholas Beeson and Jennifer Albright.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any further discussion?
It's a question.
Yep.
Is the owner of the property prior is my brother-in-law selling to a non-related party? Is it still okay for me to vote?
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's pertains to them getting a permit.
Okay.
Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
All right,
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Number 5, consider adding we had another one, but I guess not, okay. Consider adding a 1 FTE and another 1 FTE RN and community health worker to Public Health Division to meet new county responsibilities related to the foundational public health responsibility, sustainability grant, and a cannabis education state funding increases.
Say that 5 times fast.
yeah.
It's a lot, huh? So this is something we've talked about for quite some time. I'm gonna give kind of an overview of this, and then Jordan will go into more specifics of what the roles will be and the anticipated work that we're needing to start with here. And Heidi's available for any kind of financial questions as well. So back in the 2023 legislative session, there were some significant changes that impact local public health. We've talked about those just to bring you up to speed. Foundational public health responsibilities, response, sustainability grant, and cannabis legalization for adult use have had a pretty dramatic impact on the roles and responsibilities of public health going forward. So foundational public health responsibilities is really the state taking a hard look at rethinking, reimagining local public health and building capacity at the local level. I think some of it was in the works and in plans before the pandemic, but the pandemic really brought it into focus and saying we need to update public health at a local level for the 21st century. Response Sustainability Grant is really focused on improving local public health emergency preparedness. So we already do some of that work, but this is an expansion of that work. And of course, the legalization of adult use cannabis has had an impact on public health, both as we've engaged in discussions around permitting and zoning and different local ordinances, but also there's additional responsibilities for public health around public health education efforts. So combined, the new money in the legislation in 2023 is over $200,000 annually going forward. Those dollars were intended to support additional public health staffing to achieve public health goals at a local level. So we've seen this coming for quite some time. The first piece was waiting for the state to decide how they were gonna allocate all these new monies. And that took a while. We were well into 2024 before we knew what the allocations were gonna be for the foundational public health responsibilities and response sustainability money. We just recently found out what the breakdown of the cannabis money will be. We're also waiting to kind of get a sense of what the state is gonna ask for us of responsibilities. In preparation for that, we came to you, I don't know, several months ago and said, we'd like to look at public health in our county in a strategic manner. We had some grant dollars that were intended to build staffing capacity from the CDC, but they're one-time dollars, and we could use those dollars for planning, and that's what we did. So that strategic planning has 2 parts. The first part is complete, and that was a staffing assessment to take a look at what our current staffing is, what our current gaps in staffing, and then adding these new responsibilities where our gaps would be. That, the result of that assessment came up with what we're asking for today, which is adding an additional full-time equivalent RN, transitioning to a PHN, and a community health worker. Community health worker is a new position for us, but it's part of what the consultant we're working with has encouraged us to look at diversifying our employment and having a number of career pathways within public health so that we can kind of grow our own professionals.
So I'm gonna turn it over to Jordan now to, give you some specifics on what the roles for these positions would be and kind of what we know to date for our responsibilities. Before I do that, are there any questions about what I just kind of blazed through?
So that consultant that we hired with that one grant, is there a summary or a report on the results of that?
Yeah, we do have a summary, of the, let me see here, of the staffing proposal. So
Okay.
we can get you guys a copy of that, but essentially that was her recommendation, was if we added those positions, it would address some of the gaps we currently have and help us meet the new requirements.
So that wasn't somebody from the state, that was an outside agency?
It was, and actually where that came from is, Jordan and I were attending a webinar for foundational public health responsibilities, so it was public health departments across the state. And, one of the public health departments, actually the city of Bloomington, had kind of gotten ahead of the curve and retained this person's services to do some planning work. And so we worked with her, since she had already was familiar with this legislation, familiar with the capacity study that we had completed, and kind of knew where we were going. She's since, I think, been retained by several other counties in the state as well.
Is her name Precious?
It is.
We have her coming back out to do phase 2 in a few weeks.
Yep. So I think a couple of you guys have been invited to that, to participate.
I saw that email, yeah.
So the second piece of that is us looking strategically at where we want to go with, especially the foundational public health responsibilities. It's, you know, it's kind of a unique thing where the state is saying co-create with us. So often we sit back and we're frustrated because we're being asked to put our Houston foot into a shoe that doesn't fit. And quite honestly, this is an opportunity where the state is saying, we really want to co-create with you and develop capacity at a local level. And so, the responsibilities in foundational public health responsibilities are pretty immense, but the state doesn't expect us to get them all done on the first day. And part of our strategic look at it is, where do we start and how do we make the most impact in Houston County? So that's the second piece of that strategic plan. Other questions? All right.
Just to echo off of some of that for the foundational public health, some of the things that these 2 new positions would really be tasked with and start working on, fall well within foundational public health responsibilities, that being some assessment and surveillance. Right now, we've got the opioid projects that we're working on. We have a current partnership with Olmsted County to create data dashboards using real-time data, and they also have moved us into getting data more in a timely fashion with Wisconsin, which is a huge success for us. I just don't have the current FTE to dig into that. This new positions would allow us to give us more capacity in that area. We also are working really closely with our dental pilot program, which we have funding for to continue the project through 2025 and then hopefully on. New positions would allow us to pull reports and pull data for that to prove the impacts at the state level. And then we continue to do research for funding opportunities to ensure we can continue the pilot program, and then also work on our referral and outreach to communities so that they are aware that we've got this project. Some other things along that, if we were to have COVID again and had to go through and the state came down and said, do contact tracing and make phone calls, I don't have the capacity or the staffing to do some of that. It's gonna take quite a bit of manpower. That would be something these new positions would be able to do. And then I really need a data person to look at the impacts of our current services so that we can strategically move in the direction of foundational public health. So they'd also be tasked with working on some community partnership development, creating a branding plan so that we can increase our presence within the community. And then really look at our community health improvement plan, which is a requirement of public health departments, and we're coming up on it's due the end of next year. And so we want to make a greater impact with the residents of Houston County, so we'd have somebody specifically tasked with that. Still working on some policy development and support. One of the main examples would be this cannabis ordinance work and us being able to really step into what that might look like. And then some accountability and performance management, working with the strategic plan and our community health improvement plan. We're gonna identify some goals and objectives for the next 3 years. And this data person that we would bring on would be able to actively produce data that we could report back and say, this is the impact we're having. And if we're not making correct impacts with that strategic plan, we're able to pivot and then change up some of their work plan. So, along with the other two fundings, that was foundational public health. We also have cannabis funds. There's not a current work plan through MDH. We're still waiting for that to come out, but that will have a set of specific duties for us to do. I'm thinking it's gonna follow tobacco prevention work, which is education to schools and the public, continuing our involvement with ordinances, and possibly education to the realtor, or to the businesses within Houston County. I don't currently have an FTE to support that work. So these new positions would allow us for community education and outreach as it relates to legalization of cannabis. And then response sustainability grant. This funding acknowledges the previous lack of funding that the state had for emergency preparedness. It's meant to ensure that counties can increase their individual emergency preparedness responsibilities, and comes alongside our FEP funding, emergency preparedness funding, so that counties can have a 0.5 FTE in emergency response, which we currently do not have. And a few things that they would be working on would be training our public health staff on emergency preparedness, based on the local priorities that we are coming up with through our hazard mitigation planning with the Sheriff's Department. Expanding on our mutual aid agreements with the community partners as it relates to emergency response. Looking at our technology platform so that we can easily access our volunteers and call down if we need to. And then maybe updating multiple sections of our local public health response plan as it relates to pandemic plan, mass dispensing, and emergency operations. All that I currently don't have FTE to do. Without taking from other areas to make sure we're meeting these requirements. We are stretched very thin. We went with the nurse position and the community health worker position because not all of these duties require a nurse. Community health worker is gonna allow us some dynamics within the office to kind of do the duties, and then we'll fall back on our nurse when we need. So the two positions would be really helpful. We are also looking at our family health team right now. We're a team of one. Because we're working to hire the open position. We're not maximizing all of the current funding that we have in there because we don't have enough staff to do that. And so adding additional staff like this will allow us to maximize the funding and not have to give it back. There's also not third-party reimbursements included in some of this, so we'll be looking at that too and how we can also maximize that, so. And then these duties would grow as we get farther and farther into foundational public health responsibilities too, because it is so vast.
Any questions on that portion?
What happens if the grants run out in January? Then we gotta foot the bill?
Well, right now, they are in the statute and they're in the state budget, base budget, which nothing is for certain in government, but that's about as close as certain. A lot of the funding that we receive on a regular basis are those kinds of grants that are in the statute. Their responsibilities and funding, cost shares, all of those things are in the statute. It would be a significant change if that were to occur. I'd also note that there was a lot of bipartisan support in Minnesota for looking at kind of a modernization and upgrade of local public health. And so it would have to be a pretty significant change to be able to change that. So just to be clear, it's not that it can't happen, but that's about as secure of funding from the state as we will ever see.
So this funding wasn't the one-time money that they passed
No,
from the surplus?
no, yeah. Maybe they're I mean, I don't know how, what smoke and mirrors they use at a state level, but they have a commitment to this in statute, and it's built into the state base budget. So they would have to have statutory change to be able to go a different direction.
You commented about the one-time money, is that maybe what Commissioner Johnson's referring to? Was that used for planning, you said, some plannings and getting?
We received some money from CDC, which they called capacity building.
Infrastructure funds.
Infrastructure is a word that gets used a lot, but essentially what they were saying is you need to use this money to build your infrastructure or your people infrastructure. But it was a one-time grant, so most counties did not use that to put toward new staffing. And a lot of us have sat back thinking, okay, what do we do with this? So along comes this opportunity for us to do some strategic planning around this big change in local public health, and that's an allowable use. So we use that money, since it was one-time money, to do some thoughtful planning and how we would go forward.
We still have those funds too, and they run out in 2027, I think we have to spend those funds. So this will be something, it's an ongoing project. We'll be connecting with her to follow up and changes. But the strategic planning session we're working on in the next few weeks will be a 3-year plan.
And these two positions that we're talking about here, fully funded by the grants, or is it a portion comes out of levy and a portion of it is out of the funding?
When we presented our 2025 budget, we put these two positions below the line since the board hadn't approved them yet. The revenue that I talk about also isn't reflected in the budget because we don't have a corresponding use. At that time, we projected a small additional levy use of about 26,000. But that was before we found out that we'll be able to carry over unused funds from this year and actually the first 5 years of these grants. So we're sitting here in November and we've spent very, very little of the 2024 amount of these dollars. We'll be able to carry those over into next year, and then what we don't use in 2025 we'll be able to carry over. So for the first 5 years at least, that's the way it's structured. There likely will not be any additional levy need created from this because of that alone. But we're also going to be building third-party billing capacity with these folks. That's hard to project before the people are here and knowing exactly how we're gonna assign them and what things are billable with the work that they're doing. We also didn't know what cannabis was. Yeah, that came in just recently.
How much is that?
That is $53,000 this year, but in the 2024 legislative session, they enacted a thing to take a third of that to go in a different direction with the state. So before it even kind of got to us, they made a change to that cannabis. As you know, cannabis is a very hotly debated topic. We heard that was something that caught the public health people very much flat-footed, and they are going to work to try and restore that. Whether they do or don't, the amount that will come to us, we still will have more than enough resources to be able to do what we're planning here. So
it's gonna be a third less of the 53,000.
a third less of the 53 if there are no changes.
A third less of the 10 million that was stated for the state. What that will look like at a local level, they don't know yet.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, all we have is
all those were projection numbers.
Correct. But it could be, I just didn't want to.
yeah, thank you.
So the community health worker that'd be more like, that could be a similar role that Bree is in as an educator.
Similar, but not as senior, if you will. Our public health educator requires a degree and all of that. I'd say this is more analogous to like a case aide. She or he can do things that you don't have to be a public health educator or a nurse to do. And so we get more efficiency for that, and we also create kind of a career pathway, hoping that as we develop talent within our organization, they either go back to school or they grow with our organization, and we're building some bench strength there.
So when it comes to the cannabis education, that would be more under Breeze umbrella, wouldn't it?
Depending on what the requirements of it are, but,
Which you don't know what they are yet.
right. But similar to tobacco, and it may fall under Breeze, but there's still some things that a community health worker could do under the oversight of us in our office, Bree and I.
Well, it sounds like there's a lot of state things coming down as requirements, few known, few unknowns. The funding is there, the statutes are pretty hard to change unless you have a huge change in legislators. So that, I think it's gonna be pretty much covered. The carrying over of the dollars from one year to another year is a benefit. And I think we need to go forward with this, so I'll make a motion to consider this 2 FTEs as requested.
Motion's been made. Is there a second? Is there a second?
On the basis that this does not raise the levy, that the funding from the state pays for this, plus the carryover potential for additional dollars on the billings as far as what these 2 new people are doing, I'll second the motion.
Motion's been seconded. Any further discussion?
Is there any way to kind of track the monies that's received, carried over, and the duties of these positions? So we kind of know that it stays in what was kind of described here?
We will be tracking dollars. Heidi does a lot of that, so in addition to tracking our use of those dollars, we also have a requirement with the state for public health to have a cost share. Our cost share, we exceed that, and by a far enough margin that we don't have to put more money to this to be able to achieve the required cost share. So the money side of things, we definitely track as far as whether the money is coming in or if there's changes. And what the staff will be doing will definitely be something that will periodically be in front of you talking about. And these areas of public health are kind of gonna become the things we're talking about with public health going into the future.
So the carrying over, I can see for this year where we're carrying over a fairly good chunk of money. I don't see that carrying over much as it goes on, would it?
It's, right now, they will allow us to carry forward dollars for the first 5 years.
Okay, yeah, but if we're gonna use all that to pay for these positions, there won't be no carryover for the next year.
Well, if we have roughly $200,000 this year that we haven't used, very, very little of, and we're able to carry that into next year and we get another $200,000, we're not spending $400,000 with this.
Okay.
So each year, I mean, that will more than cover this for the first 5 years. And in the meantime, we'll be building third-party billing capacity as well, which was part of what we said when we represented a small levy need, and not knowing what the third-party revenue would be.
So is that 200,000 guaranteed, or if somebody cuts it, we're done, right?
Like I said, this, we've been told that this is in the statute, it's in the state budget. It's got a lot of bipartisan support, and the state has told us that we can carry forward dollars for the first 5 years. I think they know that we didn't even know what the money was gonna be to counties until well into 2024. So it's very difficult to spend all that money if you don't know what you're supposed to do with it and you don't even know how much it is. So they know that counties really haven't gotten going on this until the second half of '24. And so they've said, look, you can carry those dollars forward. And then we reached out and said, okay, well, that's great. What happens at the end of '25? And that's where we found out that we would be able to carry these dollars forward, unused dollars forward in each of these grants for the first 5 years. Now, maybe at the end of 4 years or 5 years, they decide that they want to extend that. I don't know, but I would suggest that what we gain in third-party billing will likely cover our small amount that we were projecting as an addition for levy.
So this did come from budget surplus, state budget surplus money.
Yeah, I don't know where it came from.
Well, it had to come from somewhere. I mean, it's
Right.
taxpayer dollars, so I think it is the one-time money that they, so my worry is that, okay, there's just gonna be a budget deficit in the state of Minnesota. They're gonna look for ways to cut. And, you know, everything's on the line then, but I'd like to see more information from that study that you did before I can make a informed decision. I mean, there wasn't much in the packet here. That's just what my feelings are, but there's been a motion and a second on the floor. Any other further discussion
We should do it by roll then. Please.
by roll?
Yes.
No?
Yes.
No, just because I agree that we need more information.
No. Want more information?
Okay, so you,
We need more information from that study that you've
Okay.
done. Some better, you know, I know Jordan went through what some of their responsibilities were gonna be, like a job description. Detailed job description.
we have those, and there's banding that's been done for the community health
That would
worker.
be, all that would be helpful,
Okay, certainly.
okay? All right,
You okay with us bringing it back in fairly short order?
As soon as you get your information together, we'll take a look at it.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
thank you. Number 6, consider reviewing and approving payments. Everybody's had a chance to look at the payments?
At Forensic Services, that's the deal we do with, the computers for county attorney's office and those prosecutions.
You and I both know they could drop that thing in a minute.
Yep,
Requesting the money back from.
gotcha. That's the only question I had.
Any other questions on the, bills? Is there a motion to approve payments?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second,
Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. On to discussion items. Number 1, administrator updates. Carol.
There's a lot going on and, you know, there's not a lot going on, so. Another thing, all the department heads are supposed to be reviewing the personnel policy and getting back to me. There is one item that came up that will need discussion and clarification before approving that. I guess I don't see approval probably happening until December.
Okay.
We do need to change the TNT date because I assumed that AMC was the first week in December like it usually is, but it's not. So the TNT meeting will be the first Tuesday, which is at the 3rd.
Yes.
Yeah.
First Tuesday is the 3rd.
We need to
change our meeting dates?
No, I think on the schedule, it's right. The third, there'll be a meeting. The second week, there won't be a work group, but there.
That's when we'll be
meetings
at
are
AM.
scheduled.
So the 3rd of December.
Yes, at 6 PM. Tax calculation is, proposed is complete. We'll change the date, get the file sent off to the Master's Touch, and
So we got that done in time to change the date? Okay, good.
yes. I did send an email to Luke to possibly, to come down. He's had a request, and I've had the request from Freeborn County. Their assessor has left. They were, I guess, talking with Luke about possibly providing some kind of service, maybe having some kind of a contract. I don't know if that's something that the board is interested in, if we should have them do that, but the same request also came from Winona County, that their assessor went to Wabasha County, and they're looking for any kind of assistance they could get from county assessors. I'm not sure if that's something that the board is interested in doing, if we should see what kind of time. I mean, the Freeborn County was looking at 1 or 2 days a week.
Does he have time to do that? That'd be a question for Luke.
No. He sounded like he wanted to help, or he could.
Well, I think we should try to help other counties that, cause we could be in that situation too sometime. A different,
It'd be
on
like,
similar lines, but
in the board's opinion, what kind of time would you think that would be okay for our assessor to allocate to them? It sounded like the county auditor, treasurer is actually the assessor department head. So the person who comes there wouldn't be dealing with the office stuff. It's, signing forms, making
doing assessor work,
Yeah.
role,
that kind of a
overseeing
role.
some of that.
So I see, Winona County's one thing, they're fairly close. Freeborn's kind of a far away county. I mean, aren't any neighboring counties that'll help them out, and they gotta come all the way to Houston County to get assistance?
I can find out some more
Yeah,
details.
I think we need more info.
more information from, how much does Luke wanna take on, if he wants to take on any of it.
Yep.
So that would have to be contract between the counties, is that right?
It sounded like that's what they would
Yep.
do. For reimbursement or on just an hourly rate or contract rate or a reimbursement for his actual salary or. So I can work with Luke and see what kind of,
And they raised a question too, as far as, do we have to hire somebody else to fill in the hours that Luke is gone? I mean,
right, that'll be some.
we gotta talk to Luke. Okay.
Don't make any sense if we gotta hire somebody, so we can run up there. That don't make no sense, but.
And we did have a discussion kind of at the personnel committee, and it would definitely depend on the amount of time that they're looking for.
Sure.
So,
But you said Freeborn, that's a long ways up the line.
That's a ways away.
Albert Lee,
Winona could be, a little easier for.
and I haven't heard if Winona did find somebody to contract with or not.
Well, their former assessor was helping out Fillmore County.
Yeah, he must have
He
decided
decided he doesn't wanna do that.
done doing contracts.
He's done doing contract work, yeah.
Yeah.
He's gonna stick to
looking.
being a referee.
Well, Winona went to
Hacken,
Wabasha.
Steve Hacken,
Steve Hacken, yeah.
He went from Winona to Wabasha.
the actual county
Well,
assessor.
yeah,
Prior to hiring their county assessor, they were contracting with this Steve Hacken, who used to be the county assessor there. And then Fillmore County contracted with him when they didn't have any.
Yep.
So like I said, I'm not sure if he decided that he's done doing that now or.
But evidently their Winona County current one went to Wabasha County.
Okay.
You know, it's almost something where, based on the requirements, it could quite possibly seem that the State Board of Assessors is a little extreme, becoming a little extreme.
They're requiring, putting more requirements on to make it more difficult, and they're gonna have to entertain the idea of sharing an assessor with counties, because this is getting,
Well, or they're going to have to look at what they're requiring.
yep. Yep.
We have, we have appraisers here that do work, but then you have the state saying, oh, you have to change all your values. Okay, well, how is this actually working for the counties to have that? So I'll get
Well,
together with Luke and
Yep.
we'll see what they're looking at and get something out to the commissioners. Yeah, an election. will be
Elections
done.
today, yep.
Well, voting will be done. Election won't be done, probably for 4 years or so.
All right, I don't really have much to bring. I went to the planning commission here last Thursday night. Listened to that. Nothing to really report on. There's a lot of different opinions and nothing really got settled, so they're gonna continue working on that.
That being the cannabis business?
Yep, the cannabis part of it, yep. Commissioner Burns, what do you got?
Okay. First question. There was a request from Bluff Country HRA for an additional $3,000 from the county. So it's a question of, they do the housing as far as the county is concerned, and they wanted additional $3,000 in support of their housing programs and whatnot.
How much we give them now?
We don't give them any now.
Right,
We added the $3,000 to the.
right. The question being, is that okay to do? Since we didn't give them any in the past, it's in the current budget. So it's just a question for that. Second, I went to the hazard mitigation online webinar, which was interesting to look at all the different aspects of hazard mitigation and what all they look at and they deal with. It's substantial. We had an airport meeting, Greg and I. We looked at the T-hanger cost. We looked at fencing costs and some other aspects of the airport. The committee recommends that we move forward with the hangar and hold back on the fencing until we see how the T-hanger turns out. It's coming in lower than, on a cost basis, than what we'd originally anticipated, but tell you bid it, you don't really know where you're at. Planning and zoning, I sat and listened to that meeting as well. One thing that, as far as cannabis is concerned, and we gotta get moving on that, because if it does come to pass on the first of the year, we need something in place. So I know we're looking at it, but it's kind of a slow go. Couple of things. First, the townships and the cities, in my opinion, should sign on to the contract. Otherwise, they accept the responsibility themselves. Rather than
The ordinance, you mean?
Right, sign on to the county ordinance. Rather than the county dropping them, they drop the county if they want to do it. One thing that was talked about a little bit at planning and zoning was sales in residential districts. That, in my opinion, is a really bad idea. And we should not allow, everything that we do as far as zoning should be in a commercial aspect, as far as highway business, commercial, industrial, or whatever, the different aspects. as well as growing. I don't think growing marijuana is
When it comes
really
to
an ag business. I think that's,
your commercial grow you're talking.
yeah, the commercial grower.
The individual can grow up to 8 plants.
8 plants in their backyard or back deck or whatever, but the commercial growing, I don't think should be anything but commercial. I did call up to the Office of Cannabis Management, and I asked them if, you know, there's 14 different categories. Meso business, macro business, growing, delivery, all this business. I asked them if, can we just have retail sales and growers and not allow any of the others? They said, talk to the county attorney, and Sam says really he doesn't think that's a good idea. But if that's the case, if we open it up and leave it open for any and all, we could have 2 or 3 cannabis, 2 or 3 macros, micros, deliver. I think now I've come to the opinion myself that we need to put a limitation on how many we're going to allow in Houston. Let's say it's 8 as a number. And that covers all 14. Somebody comes in, wants a macro, that's 1. Somebody comes in, wants a delivery, that's 2. Somebody comes in, 2 people come in and want retail, there's 4. But to limit so that we don't get overburdened with all these other aspects of the cannabis.
I find it interesting that they would tell you to contact your county attorney. What they don't know any more than they should be the ones that know all that, to give us a, you know, recommendation on that.
County attorney calls them. Jeez.
Sam's response was, his response, he says, state law, wait a minute. The short answer is the current ordinance is designed to address adult use cannabis sales. As far as blocking other uses or sales, the public policy behind the recent marijuana THC legislation would suggest it would be unwise to do so, as far as limiting everything except retail sales. I think it was unwise to have this in the first place, but that was just a question I had, but I don't have a real answer. Only thing I'm saying is we gotta get moving. That's all I got. I'm done. Thank you.
Do we?
Actually pretty quiet the last couple of weeks. I did my travel and I got back, so not too much.
Okay. Commissioner Schultz.
Well, last week we had the department head, meeting, and that went pretty well. Everyone's wrapping up on their year ends, no major, issues or problems that came forward, so that was.
It's nice to.
Okay. Greg, what do you got?
Oh, let's see, I had an airport meeting, Bob talked about that, let's see, I had a union meeting, I can't talk about that. I got, only one thing I'm gonna say is if we're gonna do this cannabis thing, it's gonna have to be us 5 to set the table, and then we'll have to take it to the planning commission. Because I'm not gonna say anything, but the planning commission is just sitting back there. They're like they're in God's country or something because they don't know what's happening, they don't care. I mean, I'm not gonna mention any names, but I know 3 or 4 of the people on the planning commission never even looked at it. So, I mean, if we're gonna do this, it's gonna have to be us 5 at a workshop with Amelia, maybe have Sam come. We'll set the table and then we'll take it to the planning commission. I mean, that's the only way it's gonna happen. Because if you're gonna wait and go back to the planning commission and try to figure this out, we'll be doing this in January, February. There's too many different opinions. I think if we set the table, they either agree to it or make a change when we're done with it.
I could see where we could help
Put the guidelines in place.
put together a draft ordinance, kind of like what they had in front of them last.
That's right.
But would not, had different opinions on that too, but
So we'd be drafting what goes to them that comes back to us. It doesn't quite. say-
it'll still have to go to the planning commission for them to review it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's fine.
They need something to work with or get going.
The trouble,
A lot of them didn't read the ordinance, so they had no clue what we were talking about. I mean, Amelia wrote down 1,000 different ideas and then that just happened to pop up that night because they didn't know we were doing this. You know?
the only thing that scares me is if we don't have something in place by the 1st of January, and I know the state is maybe gonna back up the time frame, but the 1st of January currently is when they say that the retail sales can take place. If we don't have anything in place, it's open the doors,
Be open.
because they'll have the right to do that.
Well, I agree, we need to get,
Gotta have it.
we gotta get working on this, so we should maybe plan a half an hour, 45 minutes and workshop with Amelia and some.
More like 2 hours.
I was gonna say half an hour, boy, that's up.
I didn't want to bore you too bad. I mean, it could be 2 hours, it could be 4 hours, I don't know. Depends on how much you're gonna change, you know?
Well, Amelia said in her emails that her and Sam are working on something, and it'll probably be December before they come up, bring something forward again with the planning commission.
We gotta go faster.
Yeah.
So here's the question. You got a first reading and a second reading for ordinances. What's the time frame in between? Can you have a first reading in 1 week and then the second reading the next week? Or does the public get a chance to look at it for a couple of weeks?
I don't understand this first and second reading thing. I mean,
Referring to it going before the planning commission and
Right.
public hearings is what he's
Was there a time frame?
referring to for that amount of time.
But the public hearing is considered a reading of the new ordinance.
right, which would be at the planning commission the first time, and then the second time it would come to the county board.
And is there a gap required between planning commission and county board? Does it have to have 2 weeks for the public to be able to read and review the new ordinance? Or can you do it 1 week and the next week?
As long as it's posted for the
Posting, I think, is
certain amount of time, I don't think it'd be a problem.
I think there might be a requirement as far as time frame between.
we'll have to check with.
Something to
Dave on
check,
that again
something to
before-
check.
Yep.
But I don't think we can wait until December. There's too much involved. Sorry. I won't say anymore.
Good points.
Done.
I guess that's about all I had to say.
Okay,
Just to, for the HRA, the last time we gave them appropriation was in 2019, and it was $5,000.
that's what I thought.
And so now they requested $3,000.
We dropped that in 2020 then.
Work group is in 2 weeks.
That come about.
Next week.
Yeah, I think they had more, they had enough. We were the only county that was doing that, I believe.
Work group. Oh, look at that, Lucas here. We changed it from the third Tuesday
Right.
to the second Tuesday, so it'd be next week.
That's next week.
Next week will be the workshop.
So
Want
do
to
we
hear
need to
from
get-
Luke, kind of what.
Yeah, Luke, you wanna come forward and,
Have Allison put
That's
it
fine.
on consent.
Were you on the phone with Freeburg County?
No, not this time.
Gotta get Ely
So
on here.
basically what they told me is they just need somebody to be there once a week or so and kind of deal with the assessor type stuff. They have a lot of new staff, so they don't know how to run the reports on their sales and set their numbers, so they kind of want somebody there to show them how to do that, and then once they figure it out, they can do a lot of it themselves. So I mean, I think it would be more right away and then be less and less as they learn. They just don't know how to use the systems because I guess just their assessor did that and never showed them how to run any reports or anything. So that's basically, I think, what it is. And then, there's certain, like the exempt apps and things like that, only an assessor can assign. So then I would do that kind of stuff for them until they get somebody in there.
you got time for that?
Not really, but I mean, I feel bad, I'll help as much as I can, and I can work remotely here too, so, you know, I can
So
still.
you
do-
wouldn't have to travel out there, you don't think, or?
Well, and they said that too, right away, they'd want me to come, you know, a little bit, but then it would be more so be available for remote in or phone calls and that kind of stuff, you know, just to get stuck on something. So I don't know that it'd be going there a whole lot after the first couple weeks, you know, a couple days. Cause I mean, I can show them kind of the basics and then they can call me, and I was gonna talk to Vanguard too, if you guys are okay with it, and see if they would give me a remote in so I could remote into their system and see what they're seeing at the same time, like Vanguard does for us. I think that's probably a possibility the way it sounded.
Are they fully staffed with appraisers?
Yeah, they have 4 appraisers, so that they do have a full staff of appraisers, yeah. But I don't know where they're at with their new construction or quintile or any of that. I haven't really
Just that
dove.
they were finishing up, they're working on finishing up quintile,
Okay.
permits for new construction.
That's about what I.
So Winona County is looking at something?
I guess that's what Carol
Oh.
mentioned yesterday, that they're looking for. Cause John is leaving the 15th of November, I believe. I think it's the 15th. So,
So what I'm hearing is that your signature and training of their subordinates over there is gonna be what's the two things, you know?
that's
Certain
what I
signing of certain
understand,
things.
yeah. And then, you know, and like with Winona County, I mean, I'd help if I could, but they have a totally different system than us, so I could tell them the procedures, but if they didn't know how to use their system, I wouldn't be a lot of help to them. But Freeborn has the same tax system and the same appraisal system.
So you think you'd have to go to Freeborn for a couple days a week for 2-3 weeks to get them on board?
Maybe something like that. I mean, they kind of said 1 or 2 days a week to start out, and then, yeah, you know. And I mean, I know the one appraiser there, she's really, you know, she's pretty quick and good with computers, so I think she would learn real quick, so I don't know that I'd need to be there a whole lot after the first week or two. Just be available. And that's kind of what they were saying. So,
If you were tied into their system, they had a question, you could get in and look at what their question was.
yeah,
without
from
being-
here. And that's, I mentioned it to Vanguard, but I haven't heard back if they would allow me to do that or not. I don't know if that's a liability.
Vanguard can't help them.
No, I don't know.
I mean, why not?
Yeah, I don't know. They didn't.
Well, it's probably
Well, they need an assessor, I guess, for the
Okay.
legal side of it. And they have to have an interim assessor. You know, you only have so many days to have without an assessor, and they're kind of to that point. So,
So you would teach the person that's pretty good there so that that person could be assigned as interim
yeah, because
after they've learned enough from you to take care of themselves pretty
I
much.
think so, yeah. They didn't say that they would put me as an interim, did they? They just, no, okay. Yeah, I
That
don't,
wouldn't be a possibility for
no,
us.
I don't think that would work, but,
She did say I'm having Vanguard come to assist with the finishing the quintile and the new construction.
oh, okay. Guess that's what I know. Up to you guys.
well,
You kinda gotta say whether or not this is gonna work or not.
Well, I mean, it's gonna be definitely extra. I mean, once it, going there is gonna be, you know, I'll work and make up here on the weekends or something, you know, I can do that at home the day I'm there, but once I don't have to go there and I'm just for phone calls or remote in, I don't think that'll be too much extra then. Because I can still do everything I do here then.
So how do you set up a contract like this?
She basically said that she has a contract with the former auditor treasurer that she would forward. Or if we would just bill them for his time, and I'm assuming they would pay you for your mileage and.
We need to
mean, they
figure
should
out
pay
those
everything.
details and look at the contract,
Send a copy of.
and then we can have it up
We don't wanna do it
for discussion
Yeah,
next week.
Okay.
He's gonna expect to get paid for the
I
extra.
know they're pretty desperate to.
Yeah,
Oh, our guys.
all right,
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Luke.
Sorry I was late.
that's all right. Anything else?
Carol, we still are on for 9:30 tomorrow morning, and again at 11:30 tomorrow morning? Okay, thank you.
Got the election audit tomorrow, me and you.
The canvas?
Yeah.
It's the 13th, right?
Yeah.
Yep, next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday.
Yep. Is there any closing public comment? Okay, is there a motion to adjourn unless there's? All right.
Don't even get
Yeah, it didn't take long.
Knowing it was coming.
Is there a second to that?
Yeah. Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Thank you.